Hello everyone, Ember Power here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one we're going to be taking a look at some new cards that were revealed for the set V-Star universe. This will become part of Crown Zenith, our special set in January, just approximately 1 month or so before the new rotation and the first Scarlet and Violet set. So without further ado, let's get into some of the reveals. So we have a Regigigas V and V-Star line. Just looking at the Regigigas V initially, 240 hit points, massive amount of HP for an evolving V. Also has a retreat cost of 4, which is super annoying, and weakness to fighting. However, the attack Raging Blow does do 100 damage for 3 colorless energy, and 10 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon. And then this Pokemon is now confused. So if your opponent just happens to hit your Regigigas V for a ton of damage, and you have no way out, and you still have 3 energy attached to it, you can of course just use Raging Blow. And then of course it is worth mentioning that because you are using colorless energy in these attack costs, that you can use a Memory Charm on your Regigigas V-Star to copy Raging Blow to do a whole lot of damage, although it's probably not advisable to use that strategy, but it has seen some sort of play with the Eternatus VMAX, so it is probably, just worth mentioning there. But either way, the Regigigas V-Star, 300 HP, so easily the biggest V-Star we have seen yet. I thought we'd maybe see a Wailord V-Star that would have 300 HP or more, but no, Regigigas V-Star is the biggest one yet. Also worth noting is that this kind of has a almost Laputa cast in the sky kind of artwork. I don't know if any of you have seen that film, but either way, super cool artwork on this one. Then Giga Impact for 3 cost energy does 230 damage, and this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. So I do imagine this kind of attack would be good in either some kind of tanking deck, perhaps, and then maybe you play this with Deoxys VMAX or something. I know that sounds like uber unrealistic, but there's also a Radiant Eternatus that we're going to look at in just a sec that allows you to cheat out VMAX Pokemon into play. So being able to play that would mean that you could cheat out Deoxys V-Stars, so all of a sudden your Regigigas start taking 60 less damage from your opponent's V-Star Pokemon. So that could be something worth mentioning. There's also, Radiant Gardevoir, you've got Dunsparce to remove weakness. Yeah, there's a ton of options. V-Guard Energy, so if you really wanted to, you could probably pair this up with Lugia, and then use Archops on Lugia to find, V-Guard Energy and maybe even Powerful Colors, because one Powerful Colors plus a Choice Belt will actually get you 1-hit KO on V-Stars, which is super cool. It is worth mentioning, however, that Powerful Colors will rotate shortly after this is supposed to come out, unfortunately. But the V-Guard Energy combo with, Choice Belt and I guess Double Turbo if you have to use it, but that whole combo will still exist with Lugia. But I could see this actually existing outside of Lugia as its own kind of not really stalled tanking deck, but sort of a slower attacker, because this Pokemon can attack during next turn. Yeah, you have 4 retreat cost, but you can also just play Switch, Escape Rope, Cross Switchers, to just get out the active spot. So I do think Giga Impact is a decent attack. And then Star Guardian is the V-Star power, says you can use its ability during your turn if your opponent has 1 prize card remaining, so ultra specific, but does say discard one of your opponent's bench Pokemon and all cards attached to it. So we have seen before that there is a couple of different tools that will give you an optional V-Star power, so you don't have to just rely on your own. You can use the Earth and the Seal Stone or the Forest Steel Stone from Silver Tempest. There's also Arceus V-Star that you could pair this with. So if you just want a way to accelerate energy, then you won't have to worry about Star Guardian because you'll be just using, Starbirth on Arceus. It is a very niche V-Star power, all that being said, I guess. But I don't see this being super useful. You relying on your opponent going down to 1 prize before you get to use your V-Star power seems uber specific. But I guess if if you want to just discard one of your opponent's benched, maybe you use this to discard one of your opponent's benched V-Star or VMAX, for example. And then you could use something like an Echoing Horn to bring it back up. And then, I don't know, you maybe Boss's Orders and then knock them out with Giga Impact. Could be something you could do with it. So it's a super interesting card, all that being said. So I'm interested in seeing how the sort of tanking aspect plays into it. But moving on there, we have an absolutely adorable Simisear V-Star. Unfortunately, my sort of praise for this card ends there, because this is easily one of the worst, if not the worst V-Star we've seen so far. There is supposed to be at least 3, I believe, more V-Stars to be revealed for this set, so This is by no means not the end of V-Star Pokemon. There is going to be more, so there's every chance that this could end up being amazing compared to the final three. But either way, going into it, 260 HP right off the bat is super bad. Weakness to water means Palkia is going to have a field day with you. Retreat cost of 2 is at least decent, but then we go into the attacks here, and Fireball Fever does 40 damage, and you may discard up to 5 cards from the top of your deck, and it does 40 more for each card you discarded in this way. Super bad attack. You discard 1 card, you're doing 80 damage. You discard 3 cards, you're doing 120. You discard 4 cards, you're doing 160, I believe. Or, yeah, no. Wait, that's 40, 80, 120, 160. No, you're doing 200 actually if you discard 4. I did the mouse wrong. But anyway, you're doing 200, and then you discard 5 cards, you're doing 240. So you have to mill 5 for 3 energy to do 240 damage, which is definitely not KOing the vast majority of V-Star Pokemon by a long shot. Even with Choice Belt, you're only doing 270, so yeah, I really don't think this attack is very good. And then Vstar is easily my favorite named V-Star power, I will say that much, but only does 30 damage times the number of energy cards in your discard pile. Yeah, not a very good V-Star power. Doesn't take a genius to work out this card is just not very good, sadly. You could pair this you could pair this in, a deck that is better at milling cards. So maybe you play this with, I don't know, Sandaconda or something. Groudon. There's a bunch of like silly meme mill attackers that you could pair this with, and then get a ton of value out of Vstar, and then maybe use, I don't know, Basculegion to shuffle in loads of energy, and then you discard them all again with another attacker. Either way, it just seems uber specific, and yeah, definitely not a fan of Simisear. Then we have Radiant Eternatus, which is one of the 3 Radiant Pokemon from the set. There is supposed to be 3 new Radiant Pokemon. Turns out one of them was just a reprint of Charizard from Pokemon Go, so that should be at least a little bit cheaper to acquire. But the other Radiant Pokemon are Radiant Eternatus and Radiant Charjabug. Charjabug has not been revealed yet. I'm guessing they'll save that for the full set reveal. But either way, Radiant Eternatus, 170 HP Dragon type, so we do have to factor in the fact that Regidrago can copy Power Beam, and the fact that Lance can also search for Eternatus just as a supportive effect. It can search for 3 Dragon Pokemon, so we do have to bear that in mind. But either way, the ability Climax Gate says once in your turn, when you play this card from your hand onto your bench, you may search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon VMAX and put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck, and your turn ends. So an ultra long ability, but effectively, this is just going to allow you to cheat out some VMAX Pokemon into play that you maybe wouldn't want to evolve on your bench. So think about Regigigas V-Max, for example. If you're worried about not being able to find all of them out in play for a Vikavolt, what you could do is essentially attach an energy to Vikavolt when you're active, try and find a battle via VIP pass, bench 2 Regigigas Vs, bench Eternatus, search your deck for 2 more Regigigas V-Max, and put them into play. And then on the second turn, you just have to go and find your other Regigigas V-Max. It seems just very consistent, and it's a nice way. I also mentioned earlier that Regigigas also would like to have something like Deoxys out in play, or, I mean, any attacker would really, to have minus effectively 60 damage from V-Star Pokemon. So if you think of it in those terms, you could use Radiant Eternatus to find 2 Deoxys, put them on the bench immediately. You could also use this in something like Duraludon Arceus, so you just cheat out Duraludons effectively. So you open with Arceus, you bench Radiant Eternatus, you find 2 Duraludon VMAX, then your opponent can't ever boss KO your evolving Duraludon Vs because you've just put 2 Duraludon VMAX in play. So they're like forced to knock out the Arceus and then the Duraludons, and then of course, if you're worried about Eternatus being a 1-price liability, you could always just net it up. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this card. I think it's super interesting. It's definitely one of the better Radiant Pokemon. It does, however, have to compete with Radiant Zard and Radiant Greninja, which both see a ton of play. But I do think in the right deck, and certainly in the right kind of cool box deck, which is what I think this will end up seeing playing, I think this could be a super cool, unique effect. And yeah, I'm personally very interested to see where this card ends up down the line. But moving on here, we have the Hatterene V-Max line. One of the final VMAXs to be revealed. It does seem that they are going to do several more VMAXs in this set, but apparently they are all just going to be promos or something. So this could legit be the last true VMAX, I guess, to be revealed. But either way, Hatterene V has 200 HP, has the attack horoscope that says look at top 3 cards of your deck, choose any number of energy cards, attach them to this Pokemon, and then return the remaining cards to the top of your deck. It's an okay way of accelerating some energy. You can find yourself some double turbo as well, which is nice, or horror psychic, because it doesn't specify basic energy, I should say, rather. So not a bad attack, honestly. It's just like one of those things that you probably don't want to use going second, but I guess if you're playing some kind of Hatterene V-Max quad deck, I suppose, then maybe you do, because this card doesn't seem like a very good tech card as much of it as it is. It would be better off as like in quad form. So the ability, which is Domain, says once in your turn, you may move up to 2 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's active Pokemon. So effectively, it doesn't say that it doesn't stack, so we have to assume that it does. So if you got 4 Hatterene in play, you could essentially move 8 damage counters from your Pokemon to your opponent's active Pokemon. And bearing that in mind, this could stack up over time, of course. We could use this to essentially boss KO a Sobble or something, effectively. So we could like do some cheeky plays where we boss up a Sobble, use 4 Witch's Domain, knock out one of them, take a prize card or on a Comfy even, not just a Sobble. So low HP damage could cheat you out some prizes, which is nice. And then Max Divine Wrath does 150 damage for a Psychic Double Turbo, and says your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. 150, we probably want to be using Big Charm in this deck if we're building this kind of quad tanking deck. But either way, yeah, not a terrible card, honestly. It's definitely not one of the worst VMAXs out there. It does seem super interesting. I'd be interested to see if this could ever work as like a quad deck, or if there's no future for it. But either way, it does seem super interesting, and being able to move a lot of damage counters off your Pokemon, essentially acting as a healing ability as well. So if you're able to win the Stadium War and prevent Path to the Peak being out in play, then yeah, I think Witch's Domain could be a super strong ability. So then Sky Sealing Stone is another tool card that will give you an optional V-Star power. So we do have to mention this in terms of, the Regigigas, for example. However, this says you may use this ability during your turn. During this turn, when damage from the attack of your basic Pokemon V knocks out your opponent's active V-Star or VMAX, take 1 additional prize card. So it's an ability that can be attached to a V or a V-Star, funnily enough. So it doesn't specify this Pokemon V. So you can actually put this on a V-Star and then get the effect on your basic Pokemon V. But essentially it says, if you damage from attack from your basic Pokemon V knocks out your opponent's active Pokemon V-Star or VMAX, take 1 additional prize card. A very broken effect, but theoretically it's super awkward to use because you have to get your evolving V or your non-evolving V essentially in a position where it can take a knockout on a V-Star or a VMAX. Seems pretty broken, but also you do have to get into that position. It's not just as easy as it sounds. Something like a Zacian could obviously exploit this pretty badly if it was ever able to get some, Glaring Berserkers, I guess, in play, but that whole combo is about to rotate. But either way, being able to take an additional prize card against V-Star or VMAX is, of course, super crazy. It's definitely reminiscent of ADP, but I don't think it's nearly as broken as that. Either way, I think this is like decently balanced, but it does have to compete with, Choice Band, the other tablets, and Capes of Toughness or Big Charms. So yeah, it's a super cool stone, but I'm not so sure about this one. I'll let you all decide if this is that good. But I guess if we factor in some of the evolving Vs, like Regigigas can do a whole lot of damage, so maybe there is a future for Sky Stealing Stone. But either way, I'm interested to see how this one plays out. And then Friends in Sinnoh and Friends in Isui are just box standard draw 3. So that'll do it for today's reveals. Had some cool ones, especially the Eternatus and the Regigigas are definitely my personal favorites. But either way, let me know what you think down below. It's been Ember Power, and thank you for watching. Hope to see you all next time.